So once again, thank you so much for having me, and please allow me to start. Being brave, what does it mean to you? Well, I'm sure that if I ask this definition to everybody, it means something different to each one of us. And I hope that during our very short time together, by the end of our sharing, maybe you will want to share your story of how you've been brave. And I wanted to ask quickly, how many of you actually took the time to watch my TEDx talk? Okay, it's all right. I don't want to go to the switching between the, okay, mono raised hand. Okay, I saw that now. And yes, I did, Tiva, thank you. And the reason I asked you to watch my TEDx is because that was in September of 2019. And I can honestly tell you, the Able that spoke on that stage had a lot of self-pity and still had a lot of anger and didn't have as much peace as I do now in my heart. And I wanted to allow you a before and a present version of Able. Now, we're still on the first slide. And I wanted to say is that from the world that I'm accustomed to, I am used to speaking with the masses. But what I realize is more important is how we speak to ourselves and how we speak to ourselves where we feel that we are truly authentic. And to be authentic is to, at the end of the day, have peace within your heart. And I can say 2020 was a real life-changing and pivotal year for me and probably for many people. So I just want to say once again, thank you so much for this opportunity for me to share my story with you. And next slide, please. Bravery. I'm going to surround my speech today on my relationship with my mother, which is very personal, and I have never shared it with the public. And the reason I decided to do that is because I wanted you to see bravery in action and also a continual development of what it means to have a brave heart. And of course, you can see from the slide is, being truthful, honesty has its consequences, and not necessarily bad, but also good, okay? It depends on how you wish to look at it. And second is accepting the situation that you're in and allowing yourself to feel it, which is the process of letting go. Aware of your outdated mental patterns and find the courage to change them, and also the balance between giving and self-care. Next, please. And for the next slide, I would like to see all the people as well, if possible. This is where I would like to ask you to have the yes or no, put up onto your screen. Are you currently in conflict with another human being? Yes, no. Can you hold up your little your paper? No. Okay. No, yes. Any other? Yes. Adam, yes. Anybody else? No? Jackie? Yes. Okay. Thank you very much for showing that. So let me ask you, where do you think human conflict come from? I believe it comes from our mental positioning with our built-in ego or our sense of self that tells us that we are separate from other people because we have our name, we have our body, we have our personality, and also what I call the system that was developed from growing up, which is the development of our ego. And the development of our ego, I believe, is made up of many, many things. And of course, I think it comes from one, our unique cultural experience. Two, the societal expectations based on where we live in the world. parental expectations, how our parents treat us, and the lens of how our parents see the world and what they pass on onto their children, religious views or lack thereof of religious views, financial status or background, and many more. So all of these things, I believe, are what creates the system of how we think in the world as we develop our ego from youth until now. And back in March of 2019, and this was before my TEDx talk, I had my first awakening experience, which is caused by deep suffering, where I realized for the first time ever, and I hope that it will not be my last time, that I was the observer of my thoughts. And for the first time, I realized that I was not my thoughts. I was not my emotions. I was not my body. And I wasn't, I was actually, it was as if I was consciousness and I was aware of this person called Able feeling these things. And this is not an out of body experience, okay? This was not an out of body experience, but it was caused stimulated by deep suffering that I had been suffering for over a year and a half. And it was as if I was right here and I was observing myself going through this. And what I realized at that moment, that almost everyone functions day to day on an autopilot. And this is actually called the default mode network. We function with an autopilot, basing our past mind patterns to react to the present moment, which is learned from our society, culture, lifestyle, parental influences, which developed our ego. And of course, we all have our unique lenses of how we see the world. And even if you had a twin, you would see totally different things. And these past 2 years, while I was analyzing my mind and my thoughts, and let me be specific, I'm not a psychologist, and I do not have a scientific background, but I'm merely speaking from my experience. And I have been very focused on studying spirituality and focused on my spiritual growth. So I have been reading a lot of books, as well as getting help from a wellness coach from the outside in this past year during COVID. So I started to understand a lot more my mental pattern and who I define myself to be. The next slide, the truth hurts slide. What I learned is that I had an anger and deep resentment towards my parents, and mainly towards my mother. And why my mother? Why not my father? It was because of her inability, and this comes from my expectations, okay? It is due to her inability to help my brother and I on our mental health. And I say this because she was the person who I felt, compared to my father, was the less capable person of handling her emotions. And she actually dumped a lot of her mind trash onto her very sensitive daughter. And my goal since young, and when you're a kid, I always wanted to just try to be the best girl that I could be, because I wanted my parents to love me. I wanted their approval, and they do love me, okay? They do love me, just not the way I expected. I wanted to relieve my parents of their suffering. I wanted to be the responsible eldest daughter who assisted them in their duties within my family units. I also felt a sense of obligation because my parents immigrated from Hong Kong to the US, and from the age of 13, my dad opened a Chinese American restaurant. And in this small town that we lived in called Wauseon, Ohio, it was very, very difficult to find reliable long-term staff. And as the eldest daughter, and my younger brother was 6 years younger than me, I was the only one in my family that my mom can control easily to work at the restaurant. So I was the only reliable staff that she had. And I had to absorb a lot of my mother's negativity because my mother did not live her dreams. She followed my father. And I took a lot and absorbed a lot of her mind trash, and I kept it inside of me until what I realized was until I started having my own kids, I would explode regularly like a volcanic reaction. I would explode regularly. I would say every few months or maybe like 4 times a year. And usually I would explode it towards my husband, who is the safest person around. When I get triggered, when I feel weak mentally or emotionally weak. And every time these triggers comes back, it comes back to I'm not good enough. I'm nothing. I am not capable of helping myself and others. These are the feelings that I get every time I feel weak. And I would have these spells of these volcanic reactions, I call it, for years. And I had no idea where it came from. I really had no idea, because normally when I'm not in my weakened egoic state, I feel very confident and I feel very competent. Just like my name, Able. I feel very able most of the time. But because I had this, what I said, once in a lifetime, and I hope it will not be a once in a lifetime awakening moment where I was the observer of my thoughts and not, actually feeling it. And you can become an observer of your thoughts more and more if you do more meditation and yoga. So I hope that I will become an observer of my thoughts more regularly so that I can be more aware of my feelings. And because of this once in a lifetime experience that I had back in March of 2019, I realized that I really needed help because I kept exploding and I didn't know why. And because of COVID, I had a lot less work. It was the perfect time for me to get some help. And I was very lucky that I got a wellness coach to help me. And the other thing I realized is that if I were to call myself a communications coach, how can I help others if I cannot help myself? So that's what motivated me to help myself. So with the help of this wellness coach, I understood that my anger was a safety mechanism that I used to protect myself from the feelings of being used and also from being hurt by others. Because I had, when I was young, a lot of other emotional issues, such as I had to deal with racism, stereotyping, labeling, a lot of judgments, because like I said, we were all immigrants. We moved from Hong Kong. I moved from Hong Kong to US when I was 10. And between the age of 10 and 13, I couldn't really speak English. So I dealt with a lot of racism, judgment, stereotyping on a regular basis. And then from the age of 13, I was working, a lot, almost full time at my parents' restaurant. So when my husband would trigger me, so he would say something that makes me feel like I needed to feel a certain way, or he expected me to act a certain way, that's when I get triggered. And what I realize again is that when I was younger, and mainly when I work at the restaurants, I was treated as if another staff by my mother. My mother is the one who takes care of all the staff, and I would be reprimanded when I get angry, when I have feelings. And I was just a teenager, and I know I'm making an excuse right now, but I was between the age of 13 and 18, and I was just a teenager, but I had to work at the restaurants while I was going to school. And there were times when I just really hated to be at this restaurant because I felt like this restaurant was a prison for me. And I was reprimanded for feeling how I wanted to feel. So what I learned from being reprimanded by my mother, is I had to keep the anger inside, and I had to pretend to be happy. And I'm not saying that I'm not always happy. Sometimes I'm happy. You know, I'm not a depressed child, but there was often times when I feel very, very unhappy because I didn't have a childhood. And, you know, to my parents, customers equals money, and money equals survival, because my parents come from low income from Hong Kong. So they had lack mentality. It's not about how much money you make, it's about how lack you feel. So they always feel that they needed to survive. And I always had to take care of the customers because I was the one who speak good English, and I was a reliable staff at the restaurant. And what I realized is that when I was under hypnosis, I understood deeper why I was so angry and who I was angry with. And it was mainly towards my mother. And I learned that many of my thinking was just resentments towards my mom for the way that she treated me. And also my parents really didn't have time to take care of my brother and my emotional well-being. But what I also realized is this: as I'm going through these hypnosis with this wellness coach, is that I understood finally just last year, okay, just last year, that my mom did not know any better how to help my brother and I. They don't know how. She did not know how to keep her suffering from going into me. When she's angry, she released it. When she's angry, she released it. And I was the safest person that she could release it to, just like I do with my husband. And also because I was such a good listener, and somehow I absorbed her pain. I took it all in. And I felt like I was a victim of being their daughter. And the victim role is something that I played very well for many, many, many years. I love playing the victim. When you say that you're the victim, you can't do anything, right? You don't have to take responsibility for your emotions and your behavior, and you just say, I'm a victim. I can't do anything. And I play that role a lot. That's another role that my ego put in as, okay, Able is the victim. When she's weak, remind her that she's the victim. Okay, when she's feeling sick, or when she's feeling like, you know, right before the monthly menstruation comes, and I'm sorry, I'm being very, very vivid, I would get weak. And those are the times when I would get triggered much easier. And when I realized that I had all of this ugliness inside of me, I felt a deep, deep pain from all the hurt that I had kept inside. And I started talking to my dad, because I rarely talk to my mom anyways. It's not like we had a bad relationship, but it's not like we have a good relationship. And my dad was more of the person that I was closer to. So I mainly spoke to my dad. And because I was seeing this coach and I was starting to understand all of my feelings, I was processing all of this. I started to tell my dad about all this information that I found out about how unhappy I was and how much pain I have, all this anger. And my dad said, my dad got quite angry at me. And he said, Hao Yin, this is what they call me in Chinese, you're still living in the past. Can't you just let it go? And no, I couldn't. At this time, I couldn't let it go, because I just found out. I just found out why I was so angry and why I had such resentment towards my parents, mainly my mom. So I would keep saying this to my dad on a regular basis until I realized that my parents would never say sorry to me. And I realized that the reason I kept talking to my dad is because somehow I wanted them to say sorry to me. And because I realized that they would never say sorry to me, at that time, I felt that they were not good enough parents. And they left me in so much pain and resentment that I had to deal with so much emotional pain on my own, except for now having had a wellness coach to help me. And during this time, I actually stopped talking to my mom and my dad for almost 2 months. And both my dad and I, we suffered a lot. And next slide, please. Deciding to change. So this was a very, very tough time for me. And after complaining to my husband about my parents' inability to let go of their ego to apologize to me, this is the funny thing, right? I have the ego and they have ego, but I was saying that, I realized again, it is my expectations of how they should be. While I also knew that they didn't know any better, that I needed to, at this time, with my adult mind, with my present mind, that I have started to learn to understand myself with the help of my wellness coach, that it was this time that while I'm going through such deep suffering of not talking to my mom and even rarely talking to my dad now, that I needed to rise up and find the courage and speak to my mom directly. And let me tell you, this is years of anger. And I told you I'm getting emotional, and I'm trying not to cry, but it's coming out. And this is when I ask myself, is your ego more important? Because it's your ego that is keeping you in suffering. This is what I said to myself. And this is the quote from Buddha. It's, I was drinking poison and I was hoping the other person would die. Next slide, please. Learning to accept and let go. Well, it all comes back to my expectations of, how come I'm the one who needed to change when I'm the younger one? I'm the daughter here. Aren't parents supposed to know better? Aren't parents supposed to be wiser because you're older? That was my excuse for not talking to my mom, because I did not have the courage yet to say sorry to her for how I felt towards her and my dad. And I just kept asking these questions because I was not ready. I didn't have the courage yet to say I'm sorry to my mom. But I knew I was suffering deeply and my mom was suffering deeply, because once in a while I would hear it from my dad. And really, it took me months. It took me months before I found the courage, because my husband keeps saying, why don't you just say sorry? And I keep saying, I'm not ready. I said, I'm not ready. I'm not ready. And one day I realized, and actually I picked this day because it was the day when my mom was going to have her neck surgery, which was a very big surgery. And I haven't spoken to my mom for a long time already. And on that day, I called. I told my dad, I said, can I call? And he said, okay, call at this time. It has to be like a negotiation, just to make sure she'll pick up my phone. And I called her, and I said to her, I said, Mom, I said, I'm so angry with you. I said, you have no idea how angry I am at you. You have no idea. And then I said, I'm sorry. I said, I'm sorry for feeling this way towards you, because I couldn't understand her and I couldn't understand myself. And then she said, you're sorry and I'm sorry. But she said, let it be in the past now. And after that, I was like, I was in a revelation, because my mom never says sorry. I mean, never heard her say sorry. My mom is such a strong woman. And it was like a heaviness lifted off of my shoulders. And I think it lifted off of her shoulders too. And I wanted her to feel at peace before she had this big surgery of hers. And what I realized was that just a few words with courage, I was able to relieve myself and my mom and my dad of this suffering that I had for years inside of me. And on that day, I felt very brave. I felt very brave because I was willing to accept, I was willing to let go, and I was willing to rise up. And I felt very, very happy. Next slide, please. To be brave is to understand the limitations of ourselves and of others. To be brave is to learn to let go of the past. And I always had lived in the past. I was never taught to live in the present. I never understood it until I lived in Thailand. And to be brave is to rise up and be a better version of ourselves, no matter how much we're going to lose face and how hard it's going to be. So I dare you, all of you, to speak from your hearts. Next page. At the end of the day, I needed to care about myself. I needed to relieve myself of my pain that I have kept inside for years. And I wanted peace within my heart and in my mind. So be brave and communicate from your heart. Resolve whatever problems that you have with others. Emotions come and go. We all have it. We all have to go through it before we reach enlightenment. We have to go through this body. We have to feel. To feel is to accept. And only after you have accepted will you be able to let go. This process is what can bring you peace. Peace is always within us. Only if you can find it, only if you choose to find it within you. It's always been there. It had always been there for me. I had never felt this much peace in my heart, ever, because I have learned and understood a lot more. And because of the help of my wellness coach and understanding my thinking, understanding my ego. So rise up and learn to let go. And please allow me to finish with this last slide. And this is a slide that I used to close my TEDx talk as well. And it's still relevant. Lao Tzu. Be content with what you have. Rejoice in the way things are. When you realize there's nothing lacking, the whole world belongs to you. Thank you very much. Thank you. You can do the next slide, the last slide. Sorry for my crying.
Thank you, Able. We have Sujita to.
Do we have any questions first?
Yeah, is there any questions? Yeah.
One question, sir. Okay.
Don't be in a hurry, Richard.
No.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, anybody wants to know something that, you...
I have a question.
All right, Azrina.
Able, what is your perception towards the things around you when you found peace, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do you perceive the world? How do you perceive the material things around you? I mean, does it change?
Everything is still the same. The first time I felt peace was that moment that I said, it was so clear in my head. It's in March of 2019. I was sitting in my husband's car and I was going crazy again, the volcanic reaction once again. And I was going through that, I'm not good enough, you're nothing, and this goes back to the childhood, right? The childhood memory. And it was all of a sudden I could feel everything that was happening inside of me. I could feel, I could observe, I don't know how to explain this. This is very strange. This is not out of body. I was like here, but I was observing myself, and I could feel the anger. I could feel like I was observing it for the first time. I was observing my emotions. And that was when I realized all this craziness, that the years of having these regular volcanic reactions that you have, it's not who you are, Able. You are not that. You're not crazy. You are not your emotions. You're not your thoughts. And after that went through, I felt peace in here. Not anything. Everything outside is still everything the same. But in here, and these are in increments, okay? I'm not saying that one time peace, boom, you will not have you will not have anger anymore. I'm not saying that. But I'm just saying that I had let go of something, and I had never felt that peace ever before. It was the first time I felt it in March 2019. And it was a calmness inside that I had never had, because I was a volcano. I was fire inside of me all the time. So I hope I answered your question.
I understand what you're trying to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Any other questions, guys? Come on, don't be shy.
Thank you for all the messages. I will read it later.
Okay.
I can't.
Okay, there are no questions. Able?